There's a kind of silence that only a mother understands. It's not the peaceful kind. It's the kind that settles in after the phone stops ringing, after your advice starts getting dismissed, after your presence begins to feel like an afterthought. You raised them. You put their needs before your own for years, maybe decades. You sacrificed sleep, plans, dreams, all with love. And now when you speak, they barely listen. When you need something, it suddenly feels like too much to ask. It's confusing. It's painful. And for many women, it's something they carry quietly, without ever saying a word. But just because it's common, doesn't mean it's right. If your children have stopped showing you the respect you deserve, if they've started treating you like background noise instead of the woman who built their world, then this message is for you. This is not about blaming them, and it's not about giving up. It's about gently, powerfully reclaiming your voice. Because you are still here. You are still wise. You are still worthy of being seen, heard, and honored. Not just as their mother, but as a whole person. And it's never too late to change the way you're treated by changing the way you show up. Let's talk about how. 1. The silent hurt we don't talk about. There's a pain that doesn't come with bruises. It doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It comes quietly, in everyday moments. Like when your phone sits silent on your birthday, or when your daughter visits but scrolls her phone more than she looks at you, or when you speak at the dinner table and someone talks over you like you were never there. This is the kind of hurt that doesn't always show on the outside, but it lingers. It builds up. And before long, you find yourself asking questions you never thought you'd have to ask. Do they even see me anymore? Did everything I gave stop mattering? You may not talk about it much. Most women don't. Because for years, you were the one holding everything together. You were strong, reliable, constant. So you keep the smile. You keep the peace, even when your heart is quietly breaking. Here's the truth, and I need you to hear it fully. You are not imagining it, and you are not wrong to feel hurt. Respect doesn't fade all at once. It disappears in little pieces. In the way they ignore your opinion, in the way they forget to ask how you're doing, in the way they expect you to show up, but don't show up for you. And here's another truth. You are not alone in this. Thousands of women across the country, strong, wise, loving mothers, are feeling this same ache. They've spent their lives giving everything to their families, and now they feel sidelined in their own story. But here's what many don't realize. The ache you feel is not just about them, it's also about you. Because somewhere along the way, without even noticing, you started putting your own needs on the back shelf. You taught your family how to treat you by what you tolerated, not out of weakness, out of love. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You stayed quiet when something didn't sit right. You gave more than you had left, just to keep the peace. And now that peace feels one-sided. Now you're wondering where you went in all of this. So if you've ever felt like your presence has been shrinking, if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt more like mom than the woman you used to be, please know this. There's still time to return to yourself. And you don't have to do it by shouting or demanding anything. You do it by remembering that your voice matters, that your feelings are valid, and that your worth didn't retire when they moved out. This is your moment to pause and choose a new way forward, because the love you gave was real. But now, it's time to give a little of that love back to the one woman who's always deserved it, you. 2. Kindness without boundaries isn't love. It's self-erasure. Many women believe that if they just love hard enough, give generously enough, or stay quiet long enough, things at home will stay peaceful. That their children will eventually see their sacrifices and respond with gratitude. That if they keep being kind, everything will somehow work itself out. But here's the truth that so many mothers never hear. Unspoken kindness, without limits, often leads to quiet resentment. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts when you say yes out of guilt instead of joy. When you cancel your own plans to babysit because you don't want to seem selfish. When you accept being spoken to in a tone that makes your chest tighten, just to avoid being called too sensitive. And before long, your love, which came from such a pure place, begins to erase your own voice. This isn't weakness, it's habit, it's conditioning. As women, we're often taught that keeping the family together means putting ourselves last, that saying no is selfish, that expressing hurt is complaining. So we stay agreeable, we swallow the discomfort, and we keep showing up, even when it costs us our dignity. But what if I told you that the more you give without boundaries, the less people value what you give? Not because your children are bad people, but because people tend to respect what stands firm, not what always yields. There was a woman I knew. Her name was Carol. She was 74 years old, with 3 adult children and 6 grandchildren. Carol never said no. She babysat when she was exhausted. She loaned money without question. She listened without ever feeling heard. And one day, when she politely asked her son to call before dropping off the kids, he replied, "It's not a big deal, Mom. You're always home anyway." That sentence, simple as it seemed, broke something inside her. She realized she had become the background, always there, always available, and now taken for granted. What Carol did next wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. She simply started choosing herself. When her daughter asked for help the following week, Carol replied, "I love spending time with the kids, but I've made other plans that day. Let's find a time that works for both of us." At first, her family was surprised, maybe even a little annoyed. But over time, something changed. They started asking. They started listening. They started appreciating. Because Carol had reminded them, and herself, that her time was valuable, not disposable. And that's the heart of it. Kindness is beautiful. But kindness without boundaries is not love. It's quiet self-betrayal. You are not here to be everyone's safety net, 24 hours a day. You're not here to fix every problem or carry every burden alone. You're here to live, to be loved with respect, to say yes when it feels right, and no when it doesn't. And here's something powerful to remember. You don't teach your children to love you more by giving more. You teach them to love you better by loving yourself enough to set limits. Because love with boundaries isn't rejection. It's relationship, the healthy kind. And every time you honor your own time, your own energy, your own voice, you give your children the most powerful example of all, that a woman can be both giving and grounded, both loving and strong, both a mother and a whole person. 3. You don't have to argue to be heard. When someone you love speaks to you with disrespect, when your own child dismisses your thoughts, rolls their eyes at your advice, or talks down to you as if you don't understand the world anymore, the first instinct is often to push back. You want to defend yourself. You want to say, "How dare you speak to me that way?" You want to remind them of everything you've done, everything you gave up, all the years you poured into their well-being. And maybe you've tried. You've raised your voice, you've explained, you've pleaded. But somehow, it never seems to change anything. If anything, it makes them shut down even more. Here's something most people never tell you. Arguing doesn't restore respect. Presence does. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. You only have to embody it, quietly, consistently. Without apology. Let me tell you a story. Her name was Grace. a retired school teacher in her late 60s. In her classroom, she was admired, respected, loved. But at home, her grown sons interrupted her, ignored her input. They joked that she was old-fashioned. At first, Grace tried to reason with them. She'd explain, argue, even cry sometimes, hoping they'd understand. But the more she fought for respect, the more it slipped through her fingers. And then, one day, she changed her approach. She stopped trying to win the conversation. She still spoke, but calmly, clearly, and without chasing their approval. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't try to prove she knew something. She simply began to carry herself like someone who deserved to be heard. She paused more. She corrected less. And when one of her sons mocked a story she shared, she gently replied, "I'm going to step away for now. I'll be happy to talk again when we can both speak respectfully." She didn't storm out. She didn't guilt trip. She simply modeled what dignity looks like. And do you know what happened? It didn't change overnight. But slowly, her sons began to shift. They listened more. They interrupted less. Because something about her presence had changed. It wasn't that she demanded respect. It's that she stopped accepting anything less. That's the kind of strength no argument can match. Because here's the truth. When you argue, you're still asking for respect. But when you live with quiet self-respect, others start to follow your lead. Your tone becomes your strength. Your calm becomes your boundary. And your presence becomes a mirror, showing your children a better way to treat you, without you ever having to raise your voice. So if you found yourself stuck in the same exhausting arguments, I invite you to try something different. Take a breath. Say your truth once, then step back. Not out of anger, not to punish, but to let the silence speak for you. Because you're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You've lived it. You've earned it. Now it's time to walk in it. And when you do, something powerful happens. Your children begin to hear what you're not saying, and that's often what speaks the loudest. 4. Your life cannot revolve around their schedule. You raised your children with love so deep, it became second nature to put yourself last. You did it without hesitation. You gave up vacations. You skipped your own dreams. You rearranged everything. Your time, your energy, your peace, for their needs. And maybe you told yourself, one day, when they're grown, I'll finally focus on me. But now they're grown. They have lives of their own. And still, somehow, your life keeps spinning around theirs. You wait for the phone to ring. You drop everything when they need help. You hold back tears when they forget to ask how you're doing. And here's the quiet truth that no one says out loud. When your entire world revolves around people who don't look back, you lose yourself in the orbit. It doesn't mean you don't love them. Of course you do. You always will. But love doesn't mean waiting on the sidelines of your own life. It doesn't mean putting your joy on hold, hoping they'll finally notice. Because here's what happens when you center everything around their schedule. You start measuring your worth by how often they show up. You base your happiness on how long they stay. And when they cancel or forget or rush you off the phone, it feels like rejection, over and over again. But it's not rejection. It's habit. They're used to you always being there, always available, always waiting. And maybe you didn't mean to teach them that, but now it's time to unteach it. With love, with strength, and without guilt. Let me share something with you. Her name was Linda, 70 years old, a widow. Her children lived in 3 different cities, busy with jobs and families. She used to wait by the phone every Sunday afternoon, hoping one of them would call. Some Sundays they did. Most Sundays they didn't. And each time they didn't, she'd wonder, what did I do wrong? She'd blame herself. She'd feel small, forgotten. Then one day, something shifted. Linda joined a local book club. She signed up for a watercolor class she hadn't tried since college. She started meeting her neighbor for morning walks and baking cookies for the senior center. And slowly, without even meaning to, her phone began to ring more often. Her children started calling, not out of guilt, but curiosity. They wanted to hear about her life, because she had a life again, and that's the lesson. When you stop waiting, they start wondering. When you stop chasing, they start noticing. When you begin living, you stop surviving. You are not here to be an afterthought in someone else's schedule. You're here to be the center of your own. Your days are still yours. Your time is still valuable. Your story didn't end when theirs began. So the next time you hear, "I'm too busy right now," take a breath and remember, you don't have to wait around. You can go to that movie. You can join that group. You can explore that place you always dreamed of visiting. You can live. Because the more you come back to yourself, the more they begin to see you again, not just as mom or grandma, but as a whole, radiant woman with a light that never faded, only waited. 5. When you set standards, they learn how to treat you. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes, I can't keep allowing this. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of something quieter and far more powerful, self-respect. Maybe it's after one too many times being interrupted mid-sentence. Maybe it's after being dismissed with a casual, "You just don't understand, Mom." Maybe it's after watching your children speak to others with more kindness than they show you. And you sit there thinking, do they even realize I'm a person? Not just their mother, not just a helper, not just a convenience, but a woman who feels deeply. The truth is, people will treat you how they've been taught to treat you. And whether we realize it or not, we teach people every day. With what we allow, what we excuse, what we endure in silence. That's why boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about showing people how to come closer. With care, let me share a story with you. His name was Robert. He was a retired businessman, sharp-minded and highly respected in his professional life. But at home, things were different. His adult children constantly cut him off, rolled their eyes when he gave advice, and rarely asked for his input on family decisions. He used to tell himself, "They're just busy," or "It's not worth arguing." But deep down, it hurt. Then one night, during dinner, his son criticized the way he was telling a story from his own childhood. Something about the tone, dismissive, sharp, hit a nerve. Robert didn't yell. He didn't scold. He simply put down his fork, looked at his son, and said quietly, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect to be spoken to with respect. If that's not possible, I'll excuse myself from conversations like this." It was quiet after that. Not awkward, not tense, just quiet. Because something had shifted. He didn't make a threat. He didn't guilt anyone. He simply set a standard and held to it. And here's the beautiful part. He didn't have to repeat it. Over time, his children began to adjust. They listened more. They softened their tone. They started to treat him like someone whose presence wasn't just expected, but valued. Because that's what clear boundaries do. They don't punish. They protect. They don't push people away. They invite people to rise. Boundaries are how you say, "I matter." Without raising your voice, without shutting down, just by being steady in what you will and will not allow in your space. So ask yourself gently, what behavior have I allowed because I didn't want to seem difficult? When have I stayed silent just to keep things smooth? What have I tolerated in the name of love, but at the cost of my own peace? And now ask, what would change if I calmly, kindly said, "Enough"? Not to hurt them, but to honor yourself, You deserve to be spoken to with care. You deserve to be part of the conversation. You deserve to take up space in the family you helped build. And when you begin to live by that truth, your children, whether they're 25 or 55, will start to see the shift. They'll adjust. They'll listen. Because now they know. Being in your presence is not something to take for granted. It's something to earn with love and respect. 6. You are more than what you gave. For so many years, you were the one who kept everything going. You packed the lunches, you folded the clothes, you remembered every birthday, every doctor's appointment, every little thing no one else thought about. You put your children's needs ahead of your own, not because anyone asked you to, but because that's who you are. That's what love looked like to you. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, your identity became wrapped around what you did for others. You became mom. You became grandma. You became the one everyone relied on, and the one no one really asked about. But now, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not just what you've done. You're still someone. You were someone before they were born, and you are still someone now. You're not just the caretaker. You're not just the helper. You're not just the family glue. You are a woman, a person, a soul with thoughts, dreams, talents, and passions that were never meant to disappear. It's easy to lose sight of that, especially when for so long, your worth seemed to be measured by how much you gave, how much you fixed, how much you showed up. But now, in this new chapter of life, I want to gently ask you, what fills you up? Not what fills your calendar, not what fills the silence in the house, not what makes others happy. What fills you? Is it writing, gardening, singing, dancing, painting, reading? Is it learning something new? Volunteering? Walking by the water with no one to answer to? Maybe it's reconnecting with friends who make you laugh. Maybe it's saying no without guilt. Maybe it's simply taking your mornings slow, with your tea just the way you like it. You don't need anyone's permission to begin again. You've spent so much of your life giving love outward. Now it's time to let some of that love come home. To you. Because here's what happens when you start living for yourself again. Your energy changes. Your presence becomes lighter. Your children begin to notice something different in you, something radiant. They see you not just as the person who gives, but as a woman who lives. And that shift, it changes everything. It changes the way they talk to you. It changes how often they reach out. Because now, they're drawn to your joy, not out of obligation, but out of admiration. You are not past your purpose. You're not done growing. You're not too old to begin again. You've given so much to your family. But please don't forget, your life is still yours. And you deserve to live it fully, deeply, joyfully. So here's your gentle reminder, from one heart to another. You are more than what you gave. You are still becoming. And the world, including your family, needs the whole version of you. 7. The power of one small change. Sometimes, when we realize how far we've drifted from our own center, the idea of changing everything can feel overwhelming. Where do you even begin? You've spent years, decades, putting everyone else first. And now that you're finally looking at your own needs, your own voice, your own joy, it feels like learning how to walk again. But here's the good news. You don't have to change everything overnight. You don't need to have the perfect plan. You only need to start. And it starts with one small change. Maybe that change is as simple as this. Next time someone speaks to you in a way that makes you feel small, you pause and say, "Please don't speak to me that way." Not with anger, just with truth. Or maybe your change is this. You stop saying yes when your heart is clearly saying no. You trust that it's okay, even healthy, to disappoint others if it means being honest with yourself. Maybe it means choosing to do something just for you this week. You don't have to ask anyone. You don't have to explain. You go to that yoga class. You start that puzzle. You take yourself out to lunch and sit by the window. You begin living again, even in the smallest way. Because what seems like a small step on the outside is often a giant shift on the inside. It's you taking your voice back. It's you standing tall in your worth. It's you rewriting the story of how you're treated, not by demanding it from others, but by showing it to yourself first. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to get it all right. But what you do need, and what you absolutely deserve, is the freedom to honor yourself. Let me tell you about a woman named Evelyn. She spent most of her adult life giving to her husband, to her children, to her church, to her community. She was beloved. But quietly, she was tired. She didn't know who she was anymore outside of the roles she played. One day, she stood in her closet looking at a pair of dancing shoes she hadn't touched in over 30 years. She had always loved dancing, but gave it up long ago. That afternoon, she looked up a beginner's ballroom class. She didn't tell anyone. She just went. And something inside her lit up again. Weeks later, her daughter called and said, "Mom, you sound different, happier." Evelyn smiled and said, "I feel like myself again." That's the power of one small change. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need applause. You only need a moment of courage and a willingness to put your feet back on your own path. So, what might your small change look like? Saying, "No, that doesn't work for me." Speaking up when something feels unfair. Starting a new hobby or rekindling an old one. Making room on your calendar for joy, not just responsibility. You've spent years being everything to everyone. Now it's your turn. Because the way back to being seen, being heard, being respected, starts with how you choose to see yourself. And when you make that first small change, something beautiful happens. You stop waiting for the world to treat you right, and you start treating yourself like someone who matters. And in that shift, your children begin to see it too. They see your peace, they hear your calm, and they begin to rise to the example you've set, quietly but powerfully. Because respect doesn't begin with them, it begins with you. You are still here, and you still matter. So here we are. After all the sacrifices, after all the years spent pouring love into others, after all the quiet moments where you sat with questions in your heart and pain in your chest, wondering if anyone truly sees you anymore, I want to remind you of something simple, something gentle, something true. You are still here, and you still matter. You matter, not because of how much you give, not because of how often you're needed, and certainly not because of how your children do or don't treat you today. You matter simply because you are you. The truth is, it was never about getting them to change first. It was always about coming home to yourself, to your voice, to your boundaries, to your joy, to your peace. Because when you begin to respect your own time, others start respecting it too. When you carry yourself with quiet confidence, others listen differently. When you stop chasing love, you start attracting it. Maybe your children haven't noticed yet. Maybe they've been used to the version of you who said yes too quickly, stayed quiet too long, and made herself smaller to keep the peace. But every time you speak up calmly, every time you say, "Not today, I have plans," every time you invest in your own joy, even in the smallest of ways, you're building a new foundation, not of control, but of dignity. And here's something beautiful. When you begin living again, really living, you don't lose connection. You actually strengthen it. Because your children don't just want your help, They want your wisdom, your stories, your laughter, your light. They may not know how to say it. They may not always show it, but they need to see that their mother, their grandmother, their elder is someone they can admire, not just for what you did in the past, but for the powerful, present woman you are becoming again right now. So if you've felt overlooked, if you've felt dismissed, disrespected, or invisible, let this be your turning point. Start with one boundary, one moment of stillness, one kind no, one bold yes to yourself. And watch what unfolds. Because respect doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from raising your standards, gently, clearly, and without apology. And even if your children take time to adjust, even if they don't respond the way you hope right away, keep going. You're not doing this to get something from them. You're doing this to give something back to yourself. The woman who has held so much, who has loved so deeply, who has waited so patiently, she deserves this. She deserves to feel heard, to feel seen, to feel alive again. So from my heart to yours, let me say this. You are strong. You are wise. You are worthy of respect. Not someday, not if they change, but today. Right now. And if this message touched something inside you, please share your thoughts in the comments. There is another woman out there, maybe sitting quietly with the same ache in her chest, who needs to know she's not alone. Your story might be exactly what helps her begin her own healing. And if you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because here we talk about what really matters. We honor your story, and we walk this journey together, one honest, healing step at a time. Until next time, take care of your heart, take back your space, and never forget, you are not invisible. You are irreplaceable, and your best chapters might still be waiting to be written.